Hello everybody and welcome to episode 5 of the Povey Pandemic Project. Thank you for joining us. Today, are you drinking too much? I'm sure that's a question that some of you are asking yourself, and we're going to delve into that, and with Sarah's expert advice we're going to look about what that looks like and what you might be able to do.
I've worked in substance abuse treatment since 2013. I've had my own struggles with substance abuse. And it's an interesting position to be in right now, working in substance abuse treatment and then coming home to emails about virtual happy hour and quarantinis and reading headlines about to-go cocktails and just how pervasive drinking really is right now.
And really is in our cultures anyway, it's particularly pervasive in the UK, where obviously I come from, and even here, a lot of our activities are somehow based around drinking. Drinking is such a traditional part of what we do. Sarah, I'm curious, when you say pain, can you give us maybe some examples of what that means? You said pain and trauma, so our listeners understand what you really mean there.
Those are really big words. So pain refers to, it can refer to a trauma, some big major event like violence or natural disaster or getting abused as a kid, but it can also mean moments of emotional abandonment as a child. If your parents got divorced, it can mean a lot of different things. But I think the important thing to remember with pain is that it's a sensation of dis-ease. We don't feel good. It doesn't feel good to have pain. And we know how that feels in our body.
We try to avoid it, and we use different mechanisms to avoid it that we'll talk about shortly. Just kind of wanting to delve into that a bit more so people understand. That trauma, could it be even something as simple as, just your parents were busy after work and you didn't get when you came home from school and you didn't get the attention that you really needed on a semi-regular basis, is that enough to be classed as trauma?
Yeah, when we as therapists, we have these terms called big T traumas, which rape, violence, natural disasters, divorce, and then we have little T traumas, and that can be anything from stubbing your toe, getting in a car accident, it can be losing your job. The way that I like to define trauma is any event that changes your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the world. So that moment where just things shift a little bit. It can be, and I use this analogy with my clients sometimes, it can be you at your first t-ball game and striking out and looking to the bleachers and seeing your dad look at his phone, and in that instant you learn that you were not important and that your dad was focused on other things. Even children don't have the capacity to think, oh, dad's probably getting blown up from work and he's really busy and stressed right now. Kids take everything very personally because they have to. It's about survival for them. If they're not
and they're the centre of their own world, so they haven't really learned outside their own world yet, have they? So, what are the statistics telling us that, how people are responding to this COVID-19 pandemic right now?
Well, statistics only tell us a part of the story, but alcohol sales increased by 55% in the last week of March. There was another study that said a third of all Americans that are working from home are drinking on the job, which is pretty shocking.
Yeah. And that could have an effect on their ability to do the role, and obviously an effect on, their relationship with their work colleagues, and could have safety implications depending on the job they're doing.
Yeah, and if their employers found out, they could be at risk for losing their job.
Yeah.
So, and if you're drinking during working hours, it means you're drinking longer, right? You're drinking more throughout the day. So
I guess traditionally we finish work and that's when we start drinking. If you're starting early during the day, you're likely, I guess, to have more drinks.
Yeah, and the more drinks we have, the less ability we have to moderate. So we just keep drinking and we don't have that willpower to be able to stop.
So why do you think people are drinking more?
There's a lot of reasons people are drinking more right now. There's a sense of loss, like we talked about in our last episode, the stages of grief. We're all kind of grieving. Insecurity. People are losing their jobs. People are scared about finances. they're bored, they have a lot more time on their hands. It doesn't have to be connected to this like a great void of emotional pain. It can just be that you're bored and you don't have anything else to do.
I'll own that, it's hard to stay away from the fridge right now. We have to be very careful what we're stocking here. Obviously we want to stock food in case we can't get food, but at the same time, if we have a big stock of food, I'm just going to go and eat it all. And I have to be very careful about what we stock, and it's things that need preparation, so I can't just go and immediately eat it, and otherwise I'm going to get pretty fat pretty quick, people. So Sarah told me to look up a study called Rat Park. And I think this will help us understand why people use alcohol, drugs, even food as a comfort mechanism. So, we used to be in social animals. We're designed to be social animals. A lot of our happiness comes from contact with other people. And, we're suddenly in a situation now where, even as Sarah said, we have these Zoom meetings, Skype meetings, what they calling them, like cocktail hours on Zoom and stuff like that. And there's connection there, but it's not the same connection as seeing people in the flesh, hugging people, doing stuff together. So we have this amazing disconnect, like bang, just suddenly happened to so many of us due to social distancing. So what this study did was it kind of separated up a group of rats. So you had, I think it was 16 to 18 in one cage, and then another cage, there's just one rat in it. Now, these rats, they had access to water, they had access to heroin, and was there something else? Cocaine.
Water, heroin, and cocaine.
Water, heroin, and cocaine. And what the researchers discovered was the group that was together, so the group that had community, other rats to play with, intimacy, they weren't bored, they had things to do with each other. They tasted the heroin and the cocaine, but they didn't go back to get more of it. They didn't need that. Whereas the rat that was by itself repeatedly went back and kept dipping into the cocaine and the heroin because it got a pleasure hit from that it wasn't getting from its usual socializing because that had been removed. And although rats aren't exactly humans, we do behave in similar ways. We're community animals, and this is what's happening. So we're looking for those hits of pleasure, of dopamine, we're looking for these things. It could even be something as simple as online shopping. Just whatever it is that you're struggling to control could be classed as addiction, could be classed as some kind of abuse.
I listened to something today about processed food that's very high in sugar.
Yeah.
And they pulled up an MRI scan of how the brain responds to cocaine versus how it responds to sugar. And it's very, very similar. We get that same hit to the reward center, that same spike in dopamine.
So you're basically telling me I'm addicted to cocaine by proxy.
By proxy.
I like sugar.
White, powdery.
I like sugar.
My name's Lee.
So, let's talk about, firstly, how do we recognise that we might be partaking in this behaviour in the first place?
Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself that question, and I think that takes some level of awareness. I think there's a lot of shame in asking ourselves if we have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, because we have this idea that there's two types of people. There's alcoholics and there's normies, and if you can drink normally, then you don't need to worry about drinking. You can drink freely, you'll never get addicted, and that's just not true.
And what is normal? I will have one unbelievably fruity cider a week, and that's me. And Sarah will often take the piss out of me because sometimes I can't even finish one cider. I get halfway through a bottle or a can, and I'm like, I'm done now, that's good for me. So, what do we class as normal? Is there even such a thing?
It depends on who you ask.
Right.
So, I looked this up. 9 drinks a week is considered normal.
Oh, wow.
Although that for me sounds very high.
Yeah, that's a lot.
My normal would be no alcohol. There's no safe amount of alcohol. There's a lot of research to show that. But it is such a normal and common part of our culture. So saying then defining what's normal is pretty hard to do here. I think the better question is what's best for us, what's healthy, what's serving us and adding to our lives.
Yeah.
So is having, your cider at your virtual cocktail hour with your friends adding to your life? Is it serving you? Maybe it's augmenting the good time that you're having with your friends, and it's the sense of connection and community and bonding. Or is it a stand-in for connection? Is it a stand-in for a relationship? Are you drinking because you're bored? Are you drinking because you're stressed and you can't regulate yourself and you're drinking to take the edge off? I think the question is not is it normal or not, is it
That's a good distinction. Yeah, like, I'm not drinking and this is no judgment on anybody else and they're drinking. I'm not drinking for the reason that Sarah said. I'm drinking because I get sugar in. I like the taste of the cider, and that's pretty much the only thing I can drink. Very occasionally a whiskey and Coke as well. Just to reflect that, some things that people need to be looking out for is, are they drinking because they're sad? Are they drinking because they're lonely? Are they drinking because they're bored? And they're kind of using that drinking as a crutch to avoid what might be going on for them emotionally or going on around them. So maybe that's the thing to be aware of, guys, is are you drinking for a reason as opposed to you're drinking because you just happen to like the taste of a nice glass of red wine or something, and you have that once or twice a week, as opposed to you're drinking multiple times a day and you're craving the alcohol, you're craving the feeling that the alcohol gives you.
Yeah.
Okay. And what should somebody do if they do notice that? So we've said right here are those triggers. So what should people be doing if they're noticing these telltale signs of I am drinking more than I was, or I'm drinking I'm drinking because I'm bored, I'm drinking because I'm sad, I'm drinking because I'm lonely, or I'm feeling pain. What can they do?
Great question. I'm going to refer back to what I was saying earlier about the question of, is this adding to your life? Are you feeling better? Are you waking up hungover every day? Are you feeling more anxious, more depressed? What we do know about alcohol is that it's a depressant to the nervous system. So if you're prone to anxiety or prone to depression, alcohol can be like pouring gasoline on both of those issues.
Yeah.
And that's something that I like to back up behavior change with science. So it was really helpful for me to understand, okay, when I say I want to unwind with a glass of wine, what's really happening is I'm getting like that 30-minute like delicious intoxication feeling where I feel good, I feel relaxed. But my body for the next 2 hours after that 30-minute point is flooding with cortisol and adrenaline. And so what I'm actually doing is I'm stressing my nervous system even more.
More stressed.
And it's not helping me with my anxiety. And so if I have anxiety, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Our emotions are information, and they let us know that something's a little bit off. So if you can sit with that and take pause and ask yourself, okay, what do I need right now? And if the answer to that question is to take the edge off, then drinking is probably not going to be the best way to do that. Maybe it's making a cup of tea with a plate of shortbreads, or cleaning, all the bathrooms in the house at 10 o'clock at night. Like, whatever your thing is, whatever helps you regulate yourself. So having those tools on deck to be able to cope and soothe your nervous system in a way that's actually going to be adaptive.
Okay. And how do people, what other things can people do to replace, that immediate feeling? Because, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, it's easy to understand why people get addicted to drinking, because they get that first 30 minutes and then that feeling goes away. Now the anxiety comes back, they're going to feel a little bit more stressed, so they got another drink, and they got another drink. And when you were talking about, do they feel hungover, I would imagine some people do, but then they have another drink when they get up, and immediately that feeling goes, and that's how that ongoing process of addiction works. So what other things could we do? Like, I was thinking, going for a walk outside, calling a friend, maybe, if they feel like that. Call a friend, talk to a friend, share some emotions. kind of come back to what I'm doing. One of the reasons I'm offering this men's group is exactly that. Instead of people feeling the need to have a drink, they're going to look forward to going to the men's group instead, and that's going to satiate those kind of emotional needs as an outlet for that. That's an outlet where those emotions are safe. So any other things that people could do that you can recommend?
Yeah, that super intense feeling that you have that you need to get a head change really quickly, like you need to get high or to have a glass of whiskey, whatever that feeling is, it's intense. And when we're having that kind of reaction, usually it's our nervous system is dysregulated. And so what I mean by that is our animal brain is engaged. So our body is responding to a threat like it would being chased down by a saber-toothed tiger. Our heart rate's up, our stomach's in knots, we're not thinking clearly, we can't make executive decisions, and this is where we really struggle with impulse control. The best thing to do in those moments is actually some somatic work. So
what does that mean?
Holding ice cubes, putting a towel on the back of your head, doing something really intense like taking a shower and alternating between hot and cold. Eating can be a really good way that we calm the nervous system down, which is why a lot of people are comfort eating. But when we're eating, we're letting our bodies know that we're safe, right? Like a gazelle would not be stopping to graze food if it's being chased by a tiger. So eating and masticating, chewing gum or Altoids or something like that can trick the body into believing that it's safe and start to kind of subside that intense spike in energy and activation. So any kind of sensory things, really, any sharp contrasting physical sensations.
So while Sarah was talking, it made me think of a couple of books. So Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, and The Chimp Paradox by Dr. Steve Peters are two books that really explore that relationship between, as Sarah described it, our animal brain and our executive thinking. And in the Steve Peters book, he describes it as your animal brain is your chimp, and your chimp is 20 times faster and stronger than your executive brain, which he would describe as your consciousness. And it overrides those good decisions we want to make, and you have to have a conversation between the two emotional states to kind of wear the chimp out a little bit and kind of acknowledge what the chimp wants and what it's feeling, wear it out a little bit, and then you can kind of calmly make that what you would call executive decision. So I'll put those in the show notes, but I'd recommend the Chimp Paradox and Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's reminding me of this example that I use to describe the difference between those parts of the brain. I have a real anxiety when it comes to taking off and landing on flights. And so I always take things to kind of distract myself, and one of those is like buying a magazine to read while we're taking off. However, when your nervous system is activated, your ability to read and to think logically goes out the window. So no matter what coping skill that I would have that engages that prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain, is not going to be helpful for me in that moment. What would be is taking deep breaths, doing the 4-7-8 breath, which is a really good technique to use. It's breathing in for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7 seconds, and then exhaling for 8 seconds. That can be really helpful. So more of the body-based things can be really helpful in terms of curbing that initial craving or like threat response.
Okay, and another thing is meditating. Meditating is going to help a lot in this. I like guided meditations. I use the Headspace app. Remind me what you use.
Calm. Yeah. Mine's a little different. It's Matthew McConaughey reading me bedtime stories. So.
Who would think a Southern American guy, my wife would want to listen to that, eh? Anyway, moving on. What might people be able to do? What support is out there for them? What might they be able to do to get the support they need in this moment? If they, especially if they really do notice themselves drinking more, taking recreational drugs, eating, over amount, any kind of other addiction that they might be doing. What's out there for them?
Well, I think the first thing is letting yourself know that there's no shame in having any of this. If you're drinking too much or eating too much, or you're smoking a bunch of pot, like whatever that thing is, there's no shame in it. You're trying to soothe your nervous system.
Well, it's a totally normal reaction to a state of crisis, and we're in a state of crisis. So, we're all going through this one way or another, and we've all got different ways of coping with it. So, I totally echo what Sarah's saying there. Don't have shame about this. Ask people, and you'll find that I'm talking to my friends. We're all going through very similar feelings. Everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah, and talking to your friends is a big one. Talking to your friends, those friends that are good to talk to about this kind of thing. Not the kind of friend that's like, oh well,
get over it,
stop it,
yeah.
Or the friend that's like, just have another cocktail and don't worry about it. You're not drinking too much.
The friend who's already probably drinking too
the
much
friend
themselves and wants you to partake in their descent.
Yeah, because when you want to stop drinking or you want to limit your drinking, you'll notice that people's responses around you, and people get really triggered when you're talking about stopping drinking because it affects how they feel about their relationship with alcohol. So talking to those trusted people and being discerning about who you share this with. There's a lot of online recovery support right now. AA meetings are kind of the standard go-to for people that are struggling with alcohol, but you don't have to be at that point to get help for drinking. And I think that's a huge myth that exists in our culture, that we don't have to hit rock bottom to look at our relationship with alcohol. We can do it if we're drinking a glass of wine every night. And I think that was, something that I've had to do, is look at how I'm using wine and whiskey to kind of shut off for the night instead of taking care of myself. So
just to echo, Sarah was drinking, I guess, a glass of wine a night, which I don't think anybody would class that as being an alcoholic, but you didn't like how it made you feel, and you didn't like how you felt the next day.
My anxiety was out of control. It made me made me feel really heavy.
Yeah.
And a glass of wine doesn't sound like a lot, but for me, that would be...
For those that can't see, those that listen at home, Sarah's like 5'2", although she claims to be 5'4", and she's like 115, 120 pounds. And when she says a glass of wine, she means half a pint of wine in a glass.
Well, I'm also a lightweight. It affects me so much more than I'm older. I used to be able to drink so much more, which was ridiculous and dangerous, but now I notice it way more, and it affects me in a different way. So making that decision, which was interesting because I didn't identify as an alcoholic, but I did identify that was problematic for me, and it wasn't serving me, and it wasn't helping me
that
live
kind
my
of ties
best
back
life.
to what you said at the beginning about does this serve you, and I didn't really notice it. As a husband, I didn't really notice it. I didn't think of it as being an issue until Sarah was like, I don't want to be drinking anymore. I want to take a break from it, and then obviously it's my role to support her in that. And I will echo what you said earlier. I've never really been a big drinker. Just a little bit when I was a teenager in the UK, as that was kind of the norm. But I quickly grew out of that and realised that alcohol doesn't personally serve me. And I've only ever drunk when it was something, I like the taste of it, just to experience that taste, rather than I've never enjoyed being drunk or the buzz that people enjoy. And just the stuff that would come up from my friends and people I knew, I'm out, why aren't you drinking? You're no fun if you're not drinking, you got to get drunk like we are. It's not fair you're not drinking, all of this stuff.
Strong emotional reactions.
Yeah, really strong emotional reactions, which I've had for years. So, just be aware that, that's okay. And it's okay for them to feel like that. That's about them, though. It's not about you. Mm-hmm. You have the right to, choose what you do with your body. You have the right whether you're going to drink or not. And please don't let anybody else push you into that to fit in. You're wonderful as you are. You don't need to drink to fit in.
Yeah, and And there's a lot of fun substitutes for alcohol. Like I love kombucha. There's non-alcoholic beer and wine. You can get like sparkling water if you're doing like a champagne happy hour via Zoom or whatever. Like figuring out things that you enjoy drinking. I always write on my grocery list fun drinks. I like having those like fun drinks that excite me that are different than water and tea. So
and you know what, when you're doing those happy hours, you don't have to share that you're not drinking. You know, whatever funny coloured stuff you got in the glass, you don't have to share with them whether that's got alcohol in it or not. You know, that's private to you. So
yeah, so online recovery meetings, we'll post them in the show notes. There's a blog called The Temper that is wonderful, has a lot of recovery support and articles, and it's not geared towards abstinence. So it's not meant for people that identify, well, even if you identify as an alcoholic, you can still use this resource. It's a sober resource, but it's more geared towards people that want to explore their relationship with alcohol, maybe not quit using it forever, maybe take a break from it, or learning to moderate, having like 1 glass of wine a week versus 1 glass of wine every night. So just exploring that with no judgment. So it's a really good resource if you're in that kind of middle spectrum where you're not an alcoholic, you're just exploring your relationship with alcohol.
So yeah, I was listening to this podcast the other day, and it was talking about the difference between being a moderator and an abstainer. And I definitely fit into the category of abstainer. And what that means is that for me to control something, I need to abstain from it. So, you know, when I'm racing seriously and I want to keep my weight in check and I want to recover better by not having lots of sugary and crap food, I need to completely cut it out. I don't moderate very well. You know, as I said earlier, if we have it in the house, I'll eat it. So for me, it's better to cut it out. That means no desserts, no treats, and you know, after a few weeks, I don't really tend to miss them as much. I'm not very good at moderating. Now, other people are very good at moderating. You know, they can not have sugary treats, or they can just have a bar of chocolate in the fridge and take 1 strip from it and have that bar of chocolate last a week. Whereas for me, it lasts 30 seconds. So, you know, it is what it is. But it's helpful for you to realise which of those you fit into and whether you want to abstain from, you know, having alcohol, you know, eating edibles, smoking dope, whatever it is you're doing, or whether, you know, you can set yourself some limits and you're good at sticking to those limits once you realise what those limits should be.
Yeah, so some practical boundaries of that could look like drinking after 5 o'clock, or not drinking until you've had dinner. You know, if you've been drinking during the day or drinking during your work hours, setting a time where you are going to start drinking and making that time way later than you usually do. I find it really helpful to plan my day and to have a routine. If I don't have a plan, then I have all this empty time and I get a little squirrely, and that's when I want to, you know, walk to Rite Aid and get a bottle of wine. So having that plan in place, accountability is a big thing. So one of my girlfriends and I text back and forth if we feel like we want to drink, and that's been really helpful and grounding for me, just to have someone validate that and be like, hey, what do you really need right now? Somebody to be in that with you is really helpful. In AA and in a lot of online support groups, there are sponsors that you can do that with. And if you've ever been to an AA meeting, they'll give you a list of phone numbers of people that you can reach out to after. My favorite part of AA meetings is the meeting after the meeting, where everyone gets together and exchanges information so that you build those contacts and develop those relationships. Because having that person to reach out to when you're struggling, when you're having one of those weak moments, can be really, really grounding and helpful. So those are just some of the things that I can think of right now in terms of coping and changing your relationship. One thing I did want to mention though, and it comes down to safety, is if you are really, really heavily drinking and you can't make it through the day and you're getting up during the night to drink, or you're drinking as soon as you wake up in the morning, do not stop drinking all at once. That can be very dangerous. and it can actually kill you. So if you are drinking to that extent, then you need to have a medically supported detox. So making sure that you reach out to someone, let them know how you're doing, and let them help you get into a detox facility.
And people, please, this is Sarah's area of expertise. If you need anything, you need help, you need to talk to somebody, you need some support, email us, the Povey Pandemic Project @gmail.com, message us on Facebook, Instagram, Povey Pandemic Project, on both of those. So I think that's probably it for today, unless you've got anything else you wanted to add, Sarah?
No, that's it.
Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Remember to subscribe to our channels on YouTube, like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Please share this episode with your friends. This is a particularly important one right now. There's probably someone in your friend circle that could really benefit from listening or watching this episode. And again, if you need help, reach out to us. We have places in the men's group. Sarah has room to speak to people. We'd love to hear from you. And please comment below any recommendations that you've got, any questions you've got. We'll be happy to answer them in any of our comment sections. So thanks again, guys, and goodbye.
Stay safe. Thank you.